Encounters, sightings, true stories from the people who live them. I'm Dano, and this is the Cryptid Podcast.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. You guys, I got a great guest today. I got Greg. Now, Greg is from my home state right now. This is where he's at. He's in Washington State. He's also an Army veteran. And Greg's coming on to tell us about some sightings that he's had through the years with Bigfoot. The first ones look like they started in Colorado, and then he's had other ones in the great state of Oregon. So, you guys, let's bring Greg on to the show. Greg, how's it going, bud?
Hey, not pretty good. How you doing, Dano?
I'm doing good, man. Hey, thanks, for reaching out to me. I know I saw you in a Facebook group that you and I belong to, and
Of course.
thanks so much for reaching out to me. But most of all, man, thanks for your service. I appreciate you.
Well, thank you for your service. I appreciate you.
Well, you know what, man? You'll probably say the same thing I do. You know what? It was a pleasure to serve.
It was an honor to serve.
Absolutely. So, what kind of, before we get into your encounters, what brought the whole subject of cryptids, Bigfoot, Dogman, whatever, what brought attention to you that makes you wanted to kind of go forward with investigating these things or things like that?
Well, the first thing I ever saw of Bigfoot was my dad took me to a movie theater when I was a little kid, and there was a documentary of a team following Sasquatches, blah, blah, blah. And it had the Patterson-Gimlin film. It had, a lot of stuff with John Green. And so it got me interested in it. But that, I didn't go into researching any of it until after my second sighting. And that's when I started started reading books about it. I've always been fascinated by, Dr. Goodhall and Diane Fossey and apes and gorillas and stuff. So it was kind of a natural thing, and I always had a scientific, curious mind.
Awesome. Well, hey, why don't you just let us, talk about your encounters? Like what was the first one? Where were you at? How old were you? So yeah, I'm just gonna go ahead and give you the reins and let's see what you got.
Okay. Well, I'll try to be as brief as possible because sometimes I can just rattle on for a long time about Bigfoot. It's like one of my favorite subjects. Okay, the first sighting I ever had was in Manitou Springs on the northern side of Manitou, just on the north side of Highway 24 in the east side of Williams Canyon. So if anybody goes on YouTube and looks at pterodactyl rides of the Cave of the Winds, you'll see the actual cliff I was on when you see the people swinging out, okay? Because it was pretty trippy. I mean, I was a 10-year-old little boy. My mom felt if I was in the mountains, I wasn't in the city causing trouble or anything. So she let me just go wherever because she was a single mom working all day long. And so, I would go up into, Pikes Peak. I would climb up all the mountains in Manitou Springs I climbed when I was 10 years old, So sometimes I got in a little trouble, but, it was okay. But I was up there. I just walked up there and I was looking down the cliff and I was taking slat rocks, just slate and just chucking them off the cliff, and watching them smash down on the ground. And that's when I see something move out of the corner of my eye, probably about, 200 feet from me, and I look down and there's this black female Sasquatch. She's probably maybe 7 feet tall, thinner than the Patterson-Gimlin one, but she had a baby with her, a little tiny infant. I mean, it's probably about this big, and she's pushing it up into one of the caves. And they're not like deep caves, but this one is a shallow one. And I've been up in that cave before, and it's more of a covering over, for rain and stuff would be used for, and you can actually lay in it. It's nice and large. But then she starts climbing up, and that's when, to my right, these bushes just started shaking. Now, the bushes were probably, chest high to me, probably about 3.5 feet tall. But by this time, I've watched so many animal documentaries, in school and with me and my mom, always watching them on the weekends and stuff. I was a big fascination about animals, and I just loved watching nature documentaries, learning as much as I could. And I knew that none of the animals that are there in Colorado would just shake the bushes. I mean, these things were just shaking violently, but it wasn't like something was coming through or nothing was digging out of it. And it startled me enough to where I turned around and ran away because I was 10 years old. Thinking about it, it was most likely another Sasquatch was, meandering up there, saw me coming, and then dropped down, and was hiding. Right. And then he heard the rocks, breaking and stuff, and probably took in his own action to scare me out of there so that his family could get out of there, without being hurt. Then the next one, I was about 13, 14. And I think I was like 13 in 83. Two of my friends, Greg and Sean, came with me to a little camping trip, Now, Greg is from New Jersey, and Sean was from Harlem, New York, right? And in the 80s, and the gangs were bad, so his mom sent him to his dad in Manitou so he can live there without gangs. So we walk up. His dad gave us like 2 beers to share between us. So, we're sitting there. We had the little triangle, pup tent thing. And we are between Bar Trail and the road on the Cog Railway that goes up to Pikes Peak. And the Bar Trail has a little dip and that goes up, and then you just march down to the creek. And there was like a little, waterfall, maybe like 1.5 foot deep or tall, and then a little pool, right? And there was a nice little level area of granite. So we set up our camp, and we're camping, little boys or young boys talking about all sorts of stuff, girls, blah, blah, blah. So time to, cash it in for the night. And so it's probably maybe 12, maybe 12:30 at night. And something woke me up because we basically let the fire just die down, right before we went crashing. And so we had the 3 of us sleeping in the tent. Our heads were at the back of the tent where our feet were towards the zippers. And we left the zipper open somewhat to allow air to breathe through it. And Sean was on my left, Greg was on my right, and I was in the middle, and we were sleeping. And then something woke me up because something stirred up the fire, right? And that's what got me was because the light hit me. Now I looked down at my feet, which was at the opening, and there was a giant black silhouette that just covered the entire tent, but there was 2 gigantic hairy legs. I mean, furry legs just standing there, and it looked like it was messing with the fire with a stick. Okay. And I was just like, oh my God. And I shook my friends awake and put my hands over their mouth so they wouldn't say anything. And as soon as I did that, the legs turned where it was facing us. And then the next thing I know, the 3 of us are no longer laying down, but we're sitting up with our backs pinned against the tent, and the other 2 are passed out. And so, I guess so was I. And I think we just passed out from shock, because now it's like about 8 o'clock in the morning. The fire is no longer even smoking. And we didn't find any footprints because this whole area is just filled with Pikes Peak granite, which is very solid rock. And so it was like we decided we were going to get out of there, because my friend Greg, he was from Jersey. He was just livid. He was ready to leave. He wanted to get out of there. He never wanted to go to the woods again. My friend Sean, he refused to get out of the tent when he woke up. He was too afraid that it was still out there, and that little piece of nylon that separated him in the wide world was going to protect him, to the point where my friend Sean was getting so mad, like he literally just dragged him out of the tent. and we just packed the stuff up as fast as we could. And then we started heading back to the house. Sean refused to talk while we were walking. Greg refused to acknowledge that this thing was out there. He was like so adamantly just traumatized that he was done. Right. So the next day I go see Sean and try to talk to him, and his dad's freaking out because Sean demanded to move back to Harlem, New York, where all the gangs were, because he felt it was safer than being in the woods. So yeah, it was pretty trippy. And then like I moved down to Arizona, but the entire time I'm, down in Arizona. And then I did I went up to Oregon with my friend Tim. I was, always reading books, always looking at areas on the maps, looking for the sightings, and then looking where they are on the maps and stuff. And my friend Tim was like, hey, let's move to Oregon, and I'm 17 years old. And we go down to Sun River. Now, the really weird thing is I can't confirm this as an actual sighting, but these, areas known for Sasquatches, and there's big lava tubes and lava caves. And me and him go spelunking with this tiny little flashlight, and we get into this chasmous area, and it's so big that my flashlight can't even go to the other side. Now, the weirdly weird thing is as he's sitting there talking, I can see like darker silhouettes, kind of like hunkering against the walls or something like that. And they're kind of like moving back and forth a little bit, but they're absolutely being quiet as heck. Now, if it was a bear, the bear would have most likely let us know, because, hey, we're in its turf, and if it's hungry, it's going to eat us, right? So I'm thinking that there was probably about 5 or 6 Sasquatches in that, like a family unit. But since I could not definitively say or see the actual bodies, but just this darkening silhouette kind of shadowish thing, I'm not going to actually claim they're Sasquatches, but it was freaky. Okay, so nothing else happened while I was in Bend, Oregon, and then I go into the military for a couple of years. And then as soon as I get back out, my friend Tim's like, hey, you want to move to Oregon? I was like, sure, so we moved to Oregon. And I was too busy taking care of elderly people at an adult foster home with those. So I couldn't really go out in the woods much, because that demanded my time so much. But then I move over to Lane County. And then, oh my gosh, everything just started happening, So I dropped my friend off at his house in Marcola, right? And this is my first sighting in actual Oregon itself. And I'm driving home, and I'm driving in Windstar, and I'm about 5 miles from Springfield proper. And I'm driving down, and it's twilight. And I see something that's next to a telephone pole, and it's half the size or height of the telephone pole. And I was just like, for some reason, I was just like, what was it, a broken telephone pole? It wasn't shaped like the telephone pole. It was just absolutely still black silhouette against the twilight. And I'm driving, and I start driving by, and I catch it out of the corner of my eye that this isn't a telephone pole. This is a large, wide, hairy mass just standing there on the side of the road, apparently waiting for me to drive by. And as I'm passing or going farther, he starts walking behind the van to cross the road. And I noticed that because I looked in my rearview mirror, and there was a car with its headlights on about 100 yards or so behind me. And he just completely blocks the whole window as he walks past. And I look over my left shoulder as I kind of stop the van, and there was a 3-foot barbed wire fence. Now I'm 6'1", and the barbed wire fence came up to my hips. Okay. And this thing just walks towards it, and the barbed wire fence came up to its knee. Okay. That's how tall this thing was. And it didn't do the whole Patterson Gimlin thing of swinging its arms. It was more like the Paul Freeman footage where its arms just hung there, and it just stepped over the fence like it was nothing and just moseyed on up the hill into the woods, and I freaked out, ran and drove home, told my wife that. And that's when I was just like, okay, I really need to start, looking for this. So bought myself a 4x4, little Bronco 2, painted it all nice and army camoed, from the, 90s. And that's when I started going out and doing all my Sasquatch. Now, one of the events I did, I was driving up there with my son, Theoden, and we had stopped in this one area, and I was doing what Jane Goodall, suggests. So for people is you keep going to an area, right, where you suspect Sasquatches are, and they'll basically get used to you because you're not creating any problem. They'll show themselves, they'll get more confidence and show themselves to you. So you just sit there, eat whatever, and just be chill and relax, and then let them come to you. So I was doing that over and over again. And me and my son are standing in front of this large ponderosa pine tree. And we're looking at where people have been shooting guns, right? And I was just like, it's pretty sad when these people, there's target ranges, there's actually places set up that you could go shoot, and these people just want to, shoot garbage, dump garbage and shoot and stuff. And well, right there and then I felt something around me. Okay. And I've always had this weird sixth sense when it came to animals, especially large primates or predators and primates, stuff like that. And I was just like, hold on a sec, Theo. And I was like, what the, and then right there and then I hear a gunshot about 100 yards off, just ring off. Just, right. I think it was like a Winchester 30-30. Okay. And right there and then I hear this boom, boom, and this thing was right behind the tree we were standing in front of, right? And it starts running off. And I was just like, I looked down to Theo and I wanted to immediately just start running to see it. But I had Theo and he's just a 6-year-old little kid. And I'm like, oh, what do I do? I was like, let's go look and stuff. And he's like, yeah. So, because he had no idea what's going on. And so by the time we get there, it's long gone, and he's just like, okay, well, let's go home, because we had to go pick up the littlest one. And so he full on got interested. So then about 5-6 months later, he had a friend named Russell that, was interested in it. So I was just like, okay, well, I can teach you how to track animals. It's pretty fairly simple to do. The more you do it, the better it is and easier it is. So I looked online about, from the BFR website and the history of the area. And there was a lot of sightings at the Bohemian Mining District near Cottage Grove, Oregon. And so I was just like, okay, yeah, let's go around and check this stuff out. So we decided to go down, I think it's Blue School Mountain Road, and we're driving along. And by this time, there's hardly any houses where we're at. Now that's just mostly houses, which is pretty sad when there's so many people moving into the woods and just, wiping out nature everywhere. But anyways, I digress on that. We were driving along and we stopped. And like I said, my Bronco's completely camouflaged. And there's this deer in the middle of the road just eating the grass. Then it looks up, goes back to eating the grass.
I'm having trouble connecting to the internet. It looks like an issue with the router and Echo device, so try restarting them.
Oops, sorry.
Then plug the
That was my Echo Dot. I totally forgot.
You're still good here.
Okay. So the deer then finally looks up and looks through the window and sees 3 humans looking at it, and it runs off. So we drive over and we park the car, and we start walking off, and I'm explaining, I could find deer tracks, little rabbit tracks here and there. I'm showing them this little rabbit trail, that, the rabbits go through instead of a deer trail. And then we find this one fallen log that's going, and it's probably like 20 feet long, and it's something like just pushed it over because there's a ravine filled with blackberry bushes, right? But you could see where the moss had been worn was growing, but something routinely uses that as a bridge, because there's no moss on that part where you would walk across it. And so I'm constantly now looking for Sasquatch tracks, stuff like that. Not really finding any promising one. Found a few black bear tracks. And then we're like, okay, well, it's time to get home and stuff. And we're walking along. And when I go to the woods, I usually carry like a stun gun, not a shooting taser thing, but the clacker kind, because most animals know what lightning is. And when you clack that thing that's 50,000, 100,000 volts in the air, you can feel that electricity, and also makes that really. And I also carry a sword with me. That's another deterrent for, you just pull it out and then whack a limb near you, and it chops a limb off. Whatever animal is going to be like, oh, that's a claw. Okay. So anyway, like I said, I started getting this sixth sense again. And I was like, okay, boys, just kind of follow behind me about 20 yards. Okay. Or about 10 yards. And I'm starting to walk ahead. And then I start really feeling a presence around me. And I mean, it started getting the hair on the back of my neck started standing up. So I pulled out my sword. And right there and then, Russell does one thing I advise everybody never to ever do when you're going out looking for Bigfoot. That's scream and point. Okay. He's like, Greg, there it is, and I turn, and right there and then I could see like the remnants of this black mass just barreling through the saplings, right? It's running from me, and it was probably 8 feet tall. I mean, this thing was big, and for some reason, I just decided to charge after it. I was just like, the things get near my kids, I'm going to make sure it doesn't get near anything else again. I start running through the saplings, and then my brain's like, you just left your little boy on the road back there, the trail. And I turn around, and here's my little son, Theoden, with this camping knife I got him, that's razor sharp. It looks like a pirate's blade. And he's right behind me with this look like if anything messes with him, he's taking it down. I was pretty proud, but we got to this out of the saplings, and there's this ravine. It's, run a draw where the water goes down, and there's the road on the other side, but it's about a 25-foot jump, from where I'm standing to the road. And right by the road, I could see two gigantic footprints and something had landed and was already gone because the rocks are still crumbling in falling from where it landed, and it just was gone. Okay. So it's just like, okay. So took the boys home. Theoden was like, blah, 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 blah. So, my wife was a little worried that I'm taking them out to the woods and stuff. And so it's like, not a big deal. And then shortly after that, I'm driving into Weyerhaeuser Tree Farm, right, to do some research. And I'm driving along, and the first thing I noticed, which was kind of odd, was it just had rained like an hour prior, so the roads were muddy, but it's now tacky muddy, and something was driving along another 4x, and I could see the tracks, and then they stop on this middle of the road, right? But there's divots on the right side of the tracks. Now, I didn't actually see a Sasquatch on this one, but that's the only thing I could think of, right? Because it's only black bears in this area. And I stopped my car and I looked down to the right, and about 50 yards into the woods is a full large Bronco from like 1980s. Okay. And I'm just like, wow, okay, this thing didn't stop or run off the road. Okay. It stopped and something tipped it and flipped it off the road, because there was no like roll marks, all the way down until about like 30, 40 feet off the road. So something just boom, and just flipped this thing and just flung it. And I'm like going, okay, it has to be, it's not a 7 or 8 footer. Okay, this has to be a lot larger. And for some reason, I didn't even look for Sasquatch footprints. Don't know why. I decided to go down to the Bronco and make sure that there wasn't any dead people in there, right? And it was actually kind of crumpled on a lot of parts. And this wasn't like it rolled crumpled. It was like something was pounding on the doors and stuff. But on the windshield, which was the oddest part, there was a hole about like this big. And it looked like someone took a shotgun from the inside and shot through the window, right? And there was the hood of the Bronco was crumpled on both sides, like something probably stopped and just crushed it a bit, right? And they shot at it, and then it got pissed. And so I was like looking around, and their cooler was like another 50 yards into the woods. So I was like mental notes. So I took pictures of the license plate, sent it to the police officers. And then I got my Bronco and started driving back up into the area. And I just stopped, because right on the side of the road, here's this like 7.5 foot, 8 foot tall young male Sasquatch just sitting there, squatting, just sitting there with his arms wrapped around its knees. And he's studying this one open area. And I know because a lot of deer go through that area. And I think he's just sitting there waiting for a deer to go by or whatever. And he kind of sees or hears my Bronco going, and I had it rigged for silent running as much as possible, so I could just, cruise with my windows open and listen for Sasquatch calls, whatever. And so I'm like driving up, and it kind of looks at me and it's like, oh, it's a bush. And then it's like, wait a minute, that bush is moving. And he sees me inside, because he looks me directly in the eyes. And that's when he turns and starts running. Now, I only have about 3 seconds to react, and I gun it up to that area. And I had bought this one digital camera that was just horrible. I mean, you shoot it like a little laser gun. I forgot the name of it, but it was like one of the worst cameras ever designed and made. Oh my God, it was horrible. Well, anyway, so I drove up, stopped, and then just started taking pictures. Only got about 3 pictures, and 4 pictures. 2 of them were just absolutely blurry, because, I'm pulling that trigger like a gun. And so I can send Dano the link, or send him the video or the photos. One, you could see the top of his head. I mean, he was faster than Carl Lewis, 100 yards within just a few seconds. It was just like boom, and he was gone. Okay, and that was pretty trippy. And then I go about another year, and so there was a lot of stuff I was having to deal with. And then I go back up to Weyerhaeuser Tree Farm. This time I'm driving farther up, and I was just like, I'm going to start doing an apple trap. And I was just like, okay, this was after the Skookum cast incident. Okay. And I was just like, I'm going to make my own apple trap and rig it up pretty good. So I pull into this area, and it was like when you drive into the woods and you see on dirt roads, you see that little outlet dirt road with the circle of dirt, like dirt road. And to the left of me, when I pulled in, there was a large pine tree that looked like it had just been pushed over, right? And to the right of me was 2 large ponderosa pines, and then another pine tree that was smaller than it, and it was covered in horsehair moss and moss. But at the base of it was surrounded by manzanita bushes. I was like, okay, this is a good area for the trap. Right. So I go get out of my Bronco and immediately look to the left, and there's all this grass that's probably 3 feet tall, if that. And I know something's wrong. Like I was like, go up, and I see, and there's footprint indentions in the grass, like something walked up. And then I noticed that the tree where it was fallen, something had broke off some of the branches, to make like a little hole to crawl in. And I'm like, oh geez. So I looked down, and one of them had a large footprint like that. I mean, it was huge. It was like Shaq size shoe, footprint. And so I stepped one there, and I literally had to jump, to the next footstep, and I didn't even get to it because this is like a good 6.5 foot stride, and then to another one, then to another one. And then the stride got smaller when it got to the tree. And then as I looked into the thing, you could see where something just literally ripped out all the major tree limbs that were underneath, but left the ones on the sides, almost like a barricade, like that one sighting where the people saw the female Sasquatch laying under a tree. It was just like that. Like, I'm thinking that they use the fallen trees as cover, and so they can sleep under there. The whole fallen tree thing is just fallen trees. Okay. I got a lot of stuff about that. Anyways, so I'm like, okay, well, I'll go back, get the apple traps, and I set up the apple traps, and, about 9 feet high, and poured a bunch of water, about 3 gallons of water under it. So, the black bears can't get to it. Then I rubbed the trees on the side of the trees where the apple trap are with orange and grapefruits, right? So that you got that citrus smell, and hopefully that would attract a Sasquatch. And then as I turned, I noticed that there was the manzanita bushes were just surrounding like a donut from the one tree that was right near the large ponderosa, the smaller one. And something had ripped out a bunch of the manzanita bushes and replaced them with fresh nettle branches. So these are the small branches with the really soft pine nettles, And then I got in there and was looking, and this is a good 15 by 20 foot area. And I'm looking at it, and the forensic part of my brain is like seeing the impressions. Okay. And you can see one large Sasquatch right next to another one, then a smaller one over here, and then a littlest one was between the medium-sized one and the other one, which I'm thinking it was the youngest of the infants. And then you had these two, and then the one on the other side could have been a different Sasquatch from a different day, or the young male who was, just kind of like on the verge of being kicked out of the clan or whatever, So I'm like, oh, geez. So I took a couple pictures of that with that horrible camera. They came out so horrible. I was just like, you know what? I'm just tossing that thing. And I threw the camera away that day. It was so bad. But I also had, whatchamacallit, the little disposable kinds, right? And I didn't even think about it, getting pictures of the indentions with that thing, because I don't think I had like about 2 pictures left. I think maybe 1. And so I'm like walking back to the Bronco to get my camera, because while I was hanging up the apple traps, I started hearing a stifled breathing above me. Okay. I've been around pumas that have been up in trees, and it wasn't panting like a puma. Wasn't breathing like a bear or wolves, and wolves don't climb trees. And it sounded like when you guys play hide and seek when you were little, and you're hiding like behind the curtain or something, and your friend's coming right next to you. So you have to breathe, but you're trying to breathe as quietly as possible. And that's literally what it sounded like, but it was huge, right? And I'm just like, oh, geez. So I definitely was like, I'm going to go get my camera and hopefully I could get a picture of this thing. So I grabbed my camera, And or right before I grab my camera, I see this deer, female doe. She's prancing along because it's a beautiful sunny day. It's noon, and I'm wearing my army camo fatigues that I used in the army. And as soon as she sees me, she stops. Like, she's like, "Oh my God, it's a hunter." But she looks at my hands and she instantly relaxes because I don't have a weapon. So I think deer are a lot smarter than people take them for. And I'm like, "Oh my God, yeah, I definitely got to get my camera really quickly so I could take a picture of this deer." And I grab the camera, and she's going around the two ponderosa pines, right? And so I follow her around. So you got one pine tree here, one pine tree here, the other one with the bushes right here. Deer's going around that way, and it's about like 10 yards from the actual trees, maybe 15. And I'm following her right behind her. And right before I'm about to take the picture, she like looks up and her ears drop back on her head, right? And she just kind of like falls on her butt, and she's turning the entire time, and her legs are just digging into that dirt, like the cartoons where they just turn into wheels. And she just doesn't even look where she's running. She's like, her eyes are pinned back behind where she was looking at, which was up in the tree where I saw or heard the breathing. I was just like, "Oh my gosh, I'm about to get ran over by a deer because the thing's coming right at me," because she does not know I'm there and she can't see me. So I jump out of the way at the nick of time, and the deer just flies past me. I mean, she's now in warp speed mode. And that's when I looked at her, that's when I hear this, whoa, and I'm a good distance away, and I felt that, slightly on the ground. And it sounded like something like, I don't know, like a half of an elephant just jumped on the ground. It was heavy, it was huge. And yeah, I just, and that's when I was like, "Oh, geez," I turned around, and there was a slope about 50 yards from me. And it's just a nice gradual fern covered slope that goes about 150, 60 yards. And then it's, 10 foot to 15 foot tall saplings, pine tree saplings. And then it's larger pine trees because we're in the Weyerhaeuser tree farm, and they harvest trees and then regrow them and stuff like that. And I get up to the edge, and I mean, before I can react and get the camera up, I see this mass that's about, I'm gonna say 12 to 13 feet tall, just exploding into the saplings. Now I'm thinking it could be the same one that I saw on the highway going from Arcola to Springfield, because I mean, that thing was huge, and it just right through those saplings like they were nothing, and that's when I raised the camera up. It was like, oh, I almost had it. Now, Dano, I do have a lot of the drawings from a lot of these sightings. I can email them to you if you want. And that was a pretty crazy incident. Okay. So I go home. A couple months later, these young 20-somethings that are living across the street from me, I start talking to them. And they're wanting to know, they're like, "Oh, Bigfoot. Yay, Bigfoot. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, we'd I to go see it." I was like, "Okay, fine," And hold on a second. Yeah, so I got information about 2 weeks prior from a guy. I was driving my car, filling up gas and stuff, and the people saw, one guy saw the Bigfoot Lives bumper sticker on my car that my kid put on there without permission because it's a camouflage vehicle, and now it's got this big white bumper sticker on there. Anyways, the guy, he's just like, "What, do you do Bigfoot?" And I was like, "Yeah, I do a lot of research about Bigfoot, and I usually have certain, questions I ask, to make sure that the person knows that they're actually looking at a Sasquatch. Because you wouldn't believe how many people look at a tree stump and think it's Bigfoot, or a bear and think it's Bigfoot. So I'm like, okay, yeah, we'll go down. And this one guy, he's talking to me about every year, him and his friends go to the Myrtle Creek area and go hunting black bears, right? Well, they go up there, they have an incident of 4 of them screaming and coming closer to their vehicle. These guys are all armed. So it got to the point where they lost all nerve and drove away. So I asked the guys, just like, you know what? If you will come with me, show me that area, I'd love to go. If you want to bring armaments with you and bring your friends, whatever, it'd be fine. He's like, not with the 101st Airborne will I go back to that area. So he told me exactly where to go. So I took my friends down there. And while we were walking, we park, I get out my little video recorder, and I just kind of like gradually just turning it like this. So I'm not actually like doing this with the camera, because, Sasquatches are smart enough to see you staring and looking around, and they're not going to want to hide, or they're going to want to hide if they don't know what you are, who you are. So I'm sitting there, and my friends are sitting there just jibber jabbering away, and they're just really loud. And I'm just like, and I don't have the camera on the creature, but I look down, and there's this young Sasquatch, probably about 12 years old, just looks, his head's over this tree stump, like he was laying down, relaxing or napping or something with his head on this tree stump. And he heard us and looked over, and he sees us, and he sees me looking down at him, and his eyes just get really big, like, oh my God, what am I looking at, or whatever. So I turned, I was like, hey, you guys want to see a Bigfoot? Check this out really quickly. Don't scream or anything. And by the time I looked down, it's gone. Now, here's the thing is, I think I don't know what happened, but this thing sprinted. There was like 50 yards to either side was nothing but ferns and stumps. So I'm thinking this thing just bolted as fast as it possibly could, and then dove under some ferns just to hide. Because if it ran that fast, it was screaming, and I would have heard it. But we go down to the stump, and you could see this large impression where something was laying there, and it's probably about 6.5 feet tall, and I was like, damn. And that's when it started irritating me, because the guys started trying to test my knowledge on Sasquatch, stuff like that. And like, one, they take these sticks and put them around this tree limb, and then put their hand there and do this, to make it look like there's a large hand. And they're like, hey, Greg, what's this? What's this? How do you think the Bigfoots made this? I was like, yeah, maybe if they were dumb, and I was like, don't try to test me on things, guys. I already know exactly what you did. I'll leave you here and you can walk home, which is like a 50-mile walk home. And so they agreed, no, okay. So we going along, and I see this large tree. I mean, this was a large ponderosa pine, probably about 3 feet in width, and it had just been knocked over, right? And something had just smashed off all the limbs, and it'd been there for years. And there was 4 trees that had been knocked over, so they're like in a wall formation, and the whole thing is surrounded by 20-foot thick, deep, high blackberry bushes. And so this was like almost like someone making a makeshift fortress. So me and my friends get up on the log, and we go over there, and there's just deer fur everywhere on all these logs. And the logs are about 3 feet in diameter as well, and they're probably about 50 feet long, right? And what was the weirdest thing also was there was about 3 deer skeletons that were in there that were in various degrees of decay. One was like about a week and a half old, because it still has a little bit of sinew and stuff still on it. And then there's some that were almost completely degraded. Now, friends of mine were like, well, it's probably hunters, right? And I was like, well, if they're hunters, we would see a lot more of the legs, because a lot of times hunters chop off the leg. But the biggest thing was there was a male deer head stuck against one of the joining of the trees, right? And it was like looking in at it at the area, and it's completely been decomposed, almost like all the skin's gone. But the thing is this was an 8-point rack on each side, so 16. This thing was a big rack, and no deer hunter or elk hunter would have left it. I mean, no, you would have taken the antlers with you at least. So I'm just like, okay. So we're going back down, and we're walking down this one road back to the Bronco, and up to the right of us, I can hear this like something extremely large paralleling us on the side of the road or up on the hill, but to the point where we can't see it, but it most likely is glancing up at us, or down at us. And my friends are like, do you guys hear that? And I was like, yeah. So stop for a second. It stops. So we walk about another 25 feet. It walks to about 25 feet. It stays with us the entire time we get back to the Bronco, right? And so I told my friends, any more practical jokes, you guys aren't ever coming back with me again. So drove off. About a month later, they wanted to go back out again. I was like, okay, well, you guys can sport some gas money, because I'm not doing this all for free. So, but they wanted one of their friends to go with us, who's 6 foot, about 6 foot, but he's like, 450, 475 pounds. He is a chubby boy. And so I'm like, sure, the more the merrier. I do have a certain limit of a maximum of 4, maybe 5 at the most, because the more the people there, you will run the risk of the Sasquatch just leaving the area completely. So long story short, I took them up there, showing them the difference between, where there's a territorial snaps on tree limbs to, wind like snowfall that weighs heavy on a tree and then breaks them, right? Because those are a lot of times generally in a swathing motion where, one line of just trees snaps, down one area is most likely an intimidation display of a Sasquatch just running and smashing tree limbs off the trees. And these were all about like 9-foot marker, right, of all the tree limbs just being smashed. And then I'm like, okay. And then I'm showing them different ways of tracking. There were some black bears in the area. You could see deer, some coyotes and stuff. And then there was like this large termite-ridden log on one area of this clearing. And then there's like a hill that goes up to the top of the mountain. And it's all nothing but manzanita bushes that are about 3 foot tall. So I have my back towards the manzanita bushes with the other guys, and I'm explaining them how like primates get into termite mounds. Now, if it's really fresh, a Sasquatch would just grab into it, pull some out, and then start using a limb or something to draw the termites onto it, and then just start eating them, right? To where a bear would just rake it, and you would be able to see the rake marks of the log, and they just destroy it and then start eating it all. So as I'm discussing this with them, I hear this behind me. That was literally the sound it said. And I look behind me, and there's this about 2.5 foot, about 3 foot tall young Sasquatch. I mean, it's solid black. If you guys have ever seen Chaka from the original Land of the Lost movie, he looked like that a lot, but black skin, black hair. But he was a lot cuter than Ron Howard's brother. But he had almost like a gorilla-like face. He didn't have this protruding muzzle. It was all like really flat. And I was just like, okay, guys, I just glanced at him for a second. And as soon as he saw me look at him, he's just kind of like got wide-eyed. I was like, okay, guys, don't freak out. but there's a little Sasquatch behind us, and they all turned all at once. And this little Sasquatch drops behind down into the manzanita bushes, but he's so curious. His eyes are like this. So, he's hiding, but he wants to see. And that's when Noah, he moron and a half, decides to do the replays, the whole thing of the original Ghostbusters with the librarian. He's like, let's get it right there. And then that little Sasquatch starts going, whoop, whoop, just hooting hardcore. And right there. And then we hear this. It sounded like King Kong running up the hill behind, or that was on the other side of the hill. And tell you the truth, I didn't want to have to explain to the police officers why there was 320 something stomped flat out in the woods that I drove out there with me. So I just grabbed them and started chucking them down the hillside saying run, and I told the chubby guy, I was just like, if you make me I'll leave you here if you don't run. That guy ran faster than everybody. He was like, ew. Anyways, we drove back to the house, and he's now wildly excited. He's chit-chatting to everybody, and he's trying to jump up and then stomping down as he lands to try to tell people how heavy these footsteps were. And he wasn't even coming close. This thing probably was at least 2,000 pounds coming at us. This thing was massive. It was large, and I did not want to die. So I was just like, we're all going to leave and run. Okay. And by this time, I've also been talking to a lot of Sasquatch researchers from different websites, OregonBigfoot.com. She asked me a lot of times to go, talked about sightings, because I did study a lot about primatology, biology, anthropology. So she asked me all sorts of questions about, the animals that their reports to her. And then she asked me to go do look into a report of one of her friends had seen of a young Sasquatch running across the road, and then a black bear. She thought these were all bears. Okay, one little bear running across the road on two legs, really fast. A larger black bear on all fours chasing after that one, and then two larger black bears standing on their hind legs running across the road trying to chase the semi-larger one. Okay, so obviously it was a black bear chasing a young Bigfoot, and the parents were running to its rescue. So I was like, yeah, I'll go and investigate the area. So I drive out there, and this is the craziest sighting that I had ever had. Okay, and I'm driving down the road, and I decided to take the forest roads like I always do, so I have a better chance of seeing Sasquatches. And it's like all trees, and then there's like this clearing, and I'm like, oh, thank God, I have to go pee, and so I pulled off the side of the road, and I'm standing, and it's like it opens up, and it's like a good 2.5 square miles where you can see that the foresters had mowed out a lot of the trees, and now it's like ferns are growing back and there's tree stumps, right? And I'm on this cliff that's concave like that, and it's at least 16 feet high, right? It goes cliff and then slopes down like that. So I decided to pee off the cliff, right? And that's when I hear this. Literally, that's the sound it made. And I look down, and I see this Sasquatch looking up at me, and he's now wet, and he's like, you just like, he's got that face of, you just peed on me kind of thing, but he didn't say anything after, because then it took us about a split second for us to realize what we're both looking at. Okay. And I was like, oh my gosh. And the thing presses against the cliff face, right? So I come to one side to take a better look at, and it looks up and sees me and moves to the other side. So I moved to this side to get a better look at it. And that's when I hear this whoop sound, right? And then on to my right is a thinner one, not the one that's right below me, but a thinner one now skirting up the hill, from the tree line up across the road and up into the hilltop. And then this thing starts, hooting really loud. And I was like, oh my God, I got to get my video camera, so I can record this, right? So as soon as I was running to the car, and no, I forgot to zip up and all that. Okay, so just let you guys know that, because people have asked me that. I'm running for the car, and that's when, the thing's still hooting, right? It still thinks I'm on top of that cliff. And I could hear something coming down that hillside, and it sounded like King Kong just smashing through trees and pushing, like just everything's coming out down that mountainside at Mach 1. And I was like, oh God, I'm about to die. Because, you think about humans, and when we have our children at their lives are at stake, there's nothing we're not going to do. Okay. And that's basically what I'm feeling like this thing's going to do. So I got in my truck and I drove away because I didn't want to die. And let's see. I think that's all the sightings I had. That's about it, Dano.
Dude. Holy smokes. Okay. So I will tell you this. You are the first guest I've had on where I've had 2 pages of notes front and back. So I do have questions. Let's start.
Many people do.
Let's start. Okay, let's see where I want to start here. Usually I start my questions here. So let me ask you about your very first encounter where you're tossing slate off the cliff.
Yes.
And when you saw you look down and you see a female Sasquatch. Now, at first, did you think it was a female Sasquatch, or was it not until you saw an infant is when you came up with that idea?
It was like all at the exact same time, because as soon as I saw it, she was pushing that baby with her hands up into the cliff, right? And she was a very thin Sasquatch, but I couldn't see boobs like you would see on the Patterson Gimlin film. So, but it wasn't like burly, stocky, but it had, I don't know, like a female-ish form was about the closest I could say.
Do you think that was the mom of the infant, or do you think it might have been like an older sibling?
Yeah, I think it was probably the older sibling, and maybe the mom was actually the one to my right.
Shaking the bushes violently.
Yeah.
Okay. Now you said that female that was hoisting that infant up in that little crook, that little nook or whatever, you started climbing up. Was it climbing up towards you?
No, it was because it was on the other side of the cliff. So you had where I'm at right here, right? Big tall cliff, and it goes around like that. She was to the south of me.
Okay,
on the bottom side of the trail of the other side of the cliff, and she was climbing into that nook with the baby.
Okay, so she was going to be up in there with okay, I got it.
Yeah, so she doesn't want, and at my point of view, I wouldn't have been able to see her at all if she was already up in that thing.
Okay. Number 2 in Colorado, you're on a camping trip with 2 of your buddies, Greg and Sean, and you go to the area, you set up camp.
Yeah.
Something wakes you up. Now, was it a sound that you heard, or?
No, it was actually the light. It's like, when you're sleeping in a dark room and then like you have your door open and someone turns on a hallway light down the hallway. So that ambient light goes through your eyelids and, wakes you up. And that's what it was, is the light that was shining between its legs right? As it's stirring the campfire was, the
Yeah.
flickering flames. That's what woke me up. And
Yeah.
when I woke up and I'm looking straight up, you could just see this large silhouette, and I'm looking down towards my feet. And that's when I
Right.
saw these large legs. And I'm thinking that the knees were as tall as the pup tent point,
Okay.
which was about 3 feet tall.
So this thing was messing with the fire. I don't know what it was doing. Because I'm not an expert. I don't know their behavior, but it
Yes,
was
some of them do actually mess with fires and play with them and stuff like this.
Yeah.
They'll like stir up a thing and they look at the fire and then shake it out and then do little contour trails with the smoke and all sorts of stuff.
Okay, so you see the hairy legs. It must have heard a noise you guys made. You thought you were probably being quiet as possible, but you guys obviously weren't, because it turned around and faced the tent. So my question is, you said when you guys woke up the next morning, it's like your backs were against the back part of the tent.
Yeah.
Did this thing like flip the tent up on you, or you guys
No.
just
The tent
end
was
of the tent?
completely intact. It didn't mess with any of the ties that we had tied down it with. Nothing. It was, I think what it most likely did was looked in, and we basically just went from laying down to back against the wall, screaming to the point where we just passed out.
Okay, got it. Perfect. So let me guess. I've got a couple. Like, what year did some of these things happen? So, like in Lane County, you're about 5 miles from Springfield proper. What year did that one happen?
Oh, geez, that was 2000, 2002, I think.
Okay.
No, 2001, because my youngest one, was still a toddler.
Okay. All right.
And then everything after that was like within, 2 years, because I got like super sick, like a year or about 3 years after we had moved to Springfield. And to the point where I was bedridden. I wanted people just to come and kill me because I was so sick. And that's when we moved up to Washington.
Okay. You're hanging out with your son Theo.
Yes.
You guys see this ponderosa pine. You're kind of hanging around by this ponderosa pine. You hear a gunshot, and then you hear something running off from behind the very tree you guys were pretty close to. When you guys kind of both went around behind that tree, did you notice any tracks?
No, actually, I didn't even think about looking down the 4 tracks at that point in time. I was more terrified about Theo and just kind of like, it's like, oh my God, what was that? And then more of like, did that guy, the dude who shot the gun, or the person who shot the gun, was he trying to, to warn us off, or, trying to defend us against the Sasquatch that's behind the tree looking at us? I don't know, because we didn't actually see anybody shooting the gun. I just heard the report of the rifle, but I didn't hear it strike anything around me at all.
Okay. Now, shortly after that, you were at Cottage Grove, Oregon. The Bohemian Mining is a mining camp. Is that what that is?
Well, it's the thing is called Bohemian Mining District. It's a giant
district.
area.
Okay.
And there's a lot of sightings of Sasquatch dating back into the old mining days, like 1800s and stuff. Bikers were, they ripped off a gas station, drove up into the Bohemian mining area to hide from the posse. Sheriff posses came driving up, and as they're driving down the road towards it, the bikers are now screaming towards them on their motorcycles, right? And there's stuff, junk hanging off of the motorcycles, stuff like that. They see the cops, and as soon as the cops get out of the car, they're running for the cops, asking them for protection against the monster in the woods.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah. So that's like, I'd rather go to prison than see that thing again.
So now you have Theo with you and his friend Russell. You are showing them, like a good dad does. My dad's did the same thing with me when I was pretty young. trying to show me how to track, and this is this kind of track, and that's that kind of track, and look for this type of stuff. But as you're taking point and you're going forward, you pass an area, and then shortly after you pass that area, Russell starts screaming and pointing.
Yeah.
And you said you saw a large black mass about 8 feet tall running off after into these woods. And then
Yeah, it was like literally right by the trail we were walking on. So it was going like this. Here's the trees. I move ahead and I didn't see or hear anything.
Mhm.
And then Theo and Russell are walking. And Russell, apparently, when I questioned him later, he said that the Sasquatch wasn't like hostile. It was peeking around one of the smaller trees and then kind of like pulling himself out, realizing that they're two little kids, right? And was like almost, almost going into full like, hey, I'm stepping out behind this tree. Russell then screams and points, and obviously the Sasquatch freaked out and started hauling butt. And that's when I turned around and saw the mass just blasting into the saplings.
Okay. So this is, to me, the next one I want to ask you about is very interesting to me. So you say it different than I do. I say Weyerhaeuser.
Oh, okay. I say Weyerhaeuser.
Yeah. So it's a tree farm. Where was this located at? Where was this?
So Marcola is a couple of miles east of Springfield, Oregon, northeast of it, actually. And then the Weyerhaeuser tree farm is all over those hills. I mean, it's huge. But basically, how I got there was I'd go through Marcola.
Let's not give any. I think that is an amazing area. Yeah. So let's not give exact details. I just want to keep it as, if you know, you know.
Okay.
Because I don't want. I mean, number one, Weyerhaeuser does a great thing by replanting trees. For every one tree they cut, they plant like 2 or 3 trees.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, that area, I'm sure by now is some of the younger trees that you saw then are
now they're huge.
Yeah. And what year was that? So you said the one happened in 2001. When was this one?
That was probably 2000. I think that was still 2001 because it was just only a little short time away.
Okay. So you're driving down this well, I'm just going to call it a logging road, a forest road.
Yeah.
And you look down off the side, about 50 feet off to the side, you see a full-size Bronco. It appears to be around from the
1980s.
Yeah. Now, let me ask you this. So on the road around you, because it's off the side of the road, okay?
Yes.
Did it look like there was an accident there or something like that? Just on the road, not off to the side?
No. The roads, the tracks were just stopped. And like I said, where each tire was, there was a divot in the road. Like the tires all went like that.
Yep, like something
just like if something
pushed it over,
pushed it or flipped it.
How wide is this road?
Probably about 15 feet wide.
Okay, so
these tracks were right in the middle.
So right in the middle, if on the area that it rolled over into, did you see an impact mark on the side of that road where the area that it would have rolled into?
No, the impact mark was, I said, about like 20 feet, a little bit farther down the hill. So like something literally flipped it off the road.
Well, what I'm trying to get at is and I'm not denying you here, but I truly don't know the absolute strength, but a full-size Bronco, because you probably drove them in the military. I drove them in the military. Those vehicles are like 6,000 pounds at least.
Something around there.
to me, and again, I think I'm overthinking it.
No, I think those Broncos were only about 3,000 at the most.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
give or take a few thousand, but
Yeah.
in my mind, I think I'm overthinking it. This thing, if it pushed it over, because to me it makes it sound like it just tossed it over. Because what I'm
Yeah.
thinking is like, so here's the Bronco, and you could see where the tires. I'm sure if it was I'm not sure how it was facing, but when it rolls over, that's where you're going to see the indentation
Yeah.
of where the tires, because they're rolling and they're digging into the
Yeah.
road. Now, when it rolls over, when it hits the first time, that's where I'm looking to see if there's an impact mark. Did you notice something there?
No,
And
there
then
was.
if it continued to push it over, then you would see as it rolls down. Now, how did you see it where it finally rested? When it looks like it appeared to stop rolling, where was it at? Was it on its side, on its
Yes,
roof?
it was literally on the passenger side was down, on the driver's door passenger side was up.
Okay.
Yeah, and the interesting thing was I came back about 2 days later, okay, and it was resting against a large pine tree that had been fallen over. That was like almost 4 foot in diameter was the trunk, right? And that's where it was rested. When I came back, it was 50 yards deeper into the actual woods, right? Like something just started rolling it and flipped it over rolled it over that large tree that had been fallen, and then just rolled it farther on, and there was just stuff strewn everywhere. It looked like something was trying to like mess with the tires. It was a lot more beaten up. I mean, that thing went like it went through hell. And if I can, I think I still have the photo of that Bronco. I'll have to go through all my archives.
I would
And
love
if
to
I
see
do, I will email it to you.
I'd love to see it. So when you looked around the first time, you noticed what looked like a shotgun blast. Now, did someone shoot? Does it look like someone shot their gun from the inside?
Yes, it did.
Okay, that's what I was thinking. Okay. Did you notice any traces of blood or anything in
No.
or around? Okay, nothing.
No.
Okay, perfect. Did you notice any other equipment in or around the Bronco, like any ID, any backpacks, anything like that?
No, actually, no. I'm thinking that the guys or whoever was in that Bronco, the only thing I saw that was inside the Bronco was like a sleeping bag and then an igloo cooler.
Okay.
And I'm thinking that whatever they had in that cooler, the Sasquatch is gone.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then but there was like I didn't really look deep into the Bronco because I didn't want to invade and be caught busting, stealing something or whatever. So I basically was looking through the windows and making sure there was no dead bodies, and I didn't see any blood or anything like that. So I'm thinking that after the incident happened and the guy got out through the back, and then just hauled ass.
Okay.
Because go ahead. Sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
It's just like because there's reports of people shooting these things and they stand right back up.
Yeah.
And that they're very angry. And I read a report of a man who thought it was a bear's, and so he shot it, and it stood up, turned around, and then the search crews found him later where he stomped flat. Not rolled over by a car, but like stomped flat by 2 large feet, and his gun was wrapped around a tree. Yeah. So it's just like, you
definitely hear things like that at times. So, those are all the questions that I have, man. And I just can't say thank you enough for coming on to the show.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I appreciate it. I'm gonna go ahead and close out, and then I'll talk to you in a second. Okay.
Okay, if you want, I can give a little bit of advice to the people online really quick.
Sure.
Just safety is more important than sightings, people. Okay, one, look at a lot of Diane Fossey's and Jane Goodall's work. especially all their documentaries or books to show you what primates do. Okay, they do make nests. They don't build tree houses. Okay, stuff like that. Two, invest in a good camera. Okay, like you'll see people with videos of where the leaves play havoc on the autofocus. Okay. What I use a lot now when I go out in the woods is I have this thing called an Insta 360 camera, sort of like a GoPro that has two little lenses on each side. And you can attach it to a helmet, to your backpack, and then you can walk. And then just remember that you don't have to look around when you hear these Sasquatches, right? Just remember when you hit the recording, because they can record up to hours, and then just go back through the footage on the studio, and then you can actually look 360 degrees to see where you remember where you heard it. Two small groups is always better than large groups. Preferably have one female in the group because their voices are softer and that might attract them more. Two, when you do have a Sasquatch you think is near you, one of the best things to do is every one of you kind of like sit down. And then, like, if you guys got ball caps on, take them off and then pretend to groom each other. Watch chimpanzees, gorillas, baboons, orangutans. They'll sit there and they'll go through the hairs and then they'll pick out the bugs and eat them. Okay, this to apes and primates is a significant relaxation thing. Now, they only allow people they relax with, or the other primates that relaxed with, to do the grooming, and it's a bonding situation. So if you're grooming them, your buddies, the Sasquatch will relax enough, and just maybe if you're really lucky, come and walk up and start, hey, let me see if you got any bugs in your hair, kind of thing. And if it does, let it groom you, okay? Because
I'm gonna stop you right there, man. Number one, I have no desire to have a Bigfoot come up to me and try to groom me. That's not. I mean, if he wants to show himself and I get a couple clear pictures, I'm good there. If I can maybe wave to him or try to, hold your hands open, let you know that there's nothing in your hands,
yeah,
to maybe engage in some type of like a primitive sign language or something like that, just to let him know, like, hey, man, we don't want to disturb you. Yes, we're out here looking for you. Thank you for allowing us to see you. We're good to go. And that's it. I do not want him. Well, one, he can't groom me. I don't have hair. And two, I don't know if I could handle the odor.
Yeah, they can smell pretty bad. I mean,
yeah.
Wet dog with poop, garbage, and skunk all rolled together.
Yeah.
The only fragrance that a mother can love.
And what else? What other advice do you have for people?
One, if you are going to carry armaments, just remember, just because you have a big gun doesn't mean it's going to stop. Those 13 footers, yeah, dude, you better have the best aim in your life. But the thing is don't pull out a gun, because 99% of the time those Sasquatches are passive creatures. The only ones that are going to be aggressive generally are where they had people shoot at them and they remember it. Okay. Or they are, there are some that do hunt and they're omnivores. A lot of them are omnivores and they can see you as a prey species, especially if they were raised that way. But there would be a lot more sightings, Native Americans like Navajo, they would say they were the giant cannibal giants coming down to steal people. The Slayish tribes all said that they'd steal little kids or a girl, and then they're gone, so you do have to be very careful. One thing is if you do get near a large male or female, look at them at their chin. Don't directly look them in their eyes, because most animals, even bears, you look them directly in their eyes, that is like a challenge. It's like, what? You want to fight? Come on, let's fight. And you will lose that fight. Unless it's an infant, then you're really going to lose that fight because mom's going to be right there.
Oh, yeah. All right.
Yeah. But yeah, cameras, equipment.
What about a tracking beacon? like that it's an emergency beacon that someone could pick up on if
Yeah, I mean, like a lot of skiers, they will use them. They're little tracking beacons. You just hit the button, and it goes up to a GPS satellite, right? And then law enforcement and all of them will know that you're now hurt and you need help. So if you can have it in your jacket and be able to hit the button without it being having to be pulled out. So if someone does a Renee DeHuyden or Albert Oatsman situation where they pick you up and decide to take you home for Sunday night dinner, you'll be able to hit that tracker beacon and still go home.
those
one thing
two
also,
those two names you just mentioned, will you email me those names?
Albert Oatsman and Renee DeHuyden.
Yeah.
Renee was a Sasquatcher. He had some pretty close calls and incidents, but Albert Oatsman, so far, is the only one that I've ever read who was picked up in a sleeping bag.
Yeah.
Right. This is in like 1910, right, or something like that, and literally taken home. The Sasquatch picked him up and took him home.
Yeah.
And showed him to his wife and 2 kids, and the wife wasn't happy. She
No.
was just like angry, and then he spent a week with these Sasquatches.
And he escaped.
Listening.
And he escaped by giving them like tobacco or something like that.
Yeah, the
like
snuff.
snus. Yeah.
So
That's a great story.
Yeah, I mean, as soon as I read that, I was just like, oh. And Albert Oatsman was not the kind of guy who would shirk off on people making fun of him. He would literally put a gun to someone's face and say, "What'd you just say? Are you calling me a liar?" And back then, it was like you don't call people liars unless you want to, have it out.
Yeah.
Nowadays, a lot of people, call people crazy and nut jobs, and it irritates me. But one thing is absolutely positively clear. If you want to take pepper spray and mace, bear mace, whatever, go ahead and you take it. But don't make the mistake this one guy made that I heard on the news where he wanted to stop bears from coming at him. So he sprayed the cayenne spray mace all around his campsite. Okay, the only reason why it deters bears and stuff like that because it's full force blast in the face and it's concentrated. Okay, and bears are sensitive with their nose, and they'll stop and run off because it's blinding and it's painful. But when you spray it around your campsite, you're basically ringing a dinner bell for a bear. Okay, because the bears are going to smell that odor, and it's not painful now. It's very intriguing, and they're going to be like, "Ooh, I'm going to get me something to eat. Oh, look, there's a burrito for me all tucked up in a tent." So that's basically my final piece of advice. Just remember, keep an open mind. If you see something with little ears like this and a flat head, that's a bear.
Yep.
Okay. Sasquatches don't have to have a pointy head. Okay. If you look at adult silverbacks, their point is more of like a sagittal crest going up like that on the back. I've did reports to where there are Sasquatches with a human-shaped head, but they have blue eyes.
Yep.
Okay. Not brown eyes, not yellowish eyes, not black eyes, but blue eyes or green eyes. Okay. So I'm thinking that there's at least 3 to 4 different subspecies in the Sasquatch species alone.
Yeah.
So
let me ask, okay, again, I definitely need to close this one up, but I have a question myself.
Okay.
Do you think that regionally Bigfoots or Sasquatch are different through different regions? So I've lived in the Pacific Northwest most of my life. I'm in Minnesota now. My encounter in Graham, Washington was very passive. It was with a female. We later found out through seeing what we saw for the year and a half that we lived there. There was a family unit in that area.
Okay.
The female was the mother. There was an older adolescent that was aggressive. There was the alpha male. He was a big boy, very, very kind of standoffish. He'd only let you see him when he wanted you to be seen. Okay. And then there were 2 juveniles that my brother encountered. Everything was very, very passive except for the adolescent, the older, I would say young adult, maybe 19 to like 22. Okay.
Yeah, whereas testosterone is now kicked in like a normal teenage boy.
And but then you hear encounters of people down south, and of course, wood boogers, skunk apes, things like that, and they're more aggressive. Then you have the Alaskan hairy man, which is
Yeah.
very aggressive. Why do you think that is?
One, encounters with humanoids or human beings in their past. A lot of times, shortness of food. Like you got to think about like a lot of the one incidences up in Alaska that were with the Native Americans. They fired arrows at them. Okay, they threw spears at them. They were trying to get them away from their fish, and they're just defending their families.
Mhm.
Okay, where the Sasquatch might be just made it curious. He wanted the fish. He wanted the meat that they're curing. Most likely that was those incidents. But then after you getting stuck with an arrow, you're going to be kind of mad, and
Mhm. Yeah.
you're just going to just full on vent on them and stuff. Now, like it also depends, I think, on what type of Sasquatch it is. Now, people just lump all these species into one species of Sasquatch,
Yeah.
and they're not. There's the ones that are ape-like, I mean, like
Mhm.
serially ape-like. There's ones that have more of a pronounced snout, and that's where I'm kind of thinking a lot of people who see Dogman, that's what they're actually seeing as the really ape-like ones, and then they're the ones that are just like almost pure human. Like
Mhm.
you see people here and they're scoping it and they're like, I couldn't do anything because it looks so human. And
Yeah.
that some of the ones I seen in Oregon were so humanoid looking, but then
Yeah.
there was a lot of other ones that were, in the southern part near Cottage Grove. Those ones had more of an ape-like face.
The
They
one
didn't have a protrusion.
the one I saw when I was 12, it looked like Patty,
Yeah,
but not as robust,
yeah.
So
So as a thinner female that probably is in her early teens, mid-teens,
oh no,
because once I think they're about like 30-ish. So
Mhm.
I'm thinking they only live probably about like 40 years, maybe 50 years. It's like humans, before we started inventing medicine, we didn't live that long, 30, 40
Right.
years, and we were the old people, of the clan, of the groups and stuff. So I'm thinking that's when they fill out, is once they start having the babies and stuff. And but also it depends on the species of the Sasquatch,
Yeah.
because there's really thin ones that are different from the large ones.
I mean, she was hefty. She was
Yeah.
definitely hefty, and she had 3 kids, so, but
Yeah.
well, all right, sir. I wanna say thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it.
Okay. Well, I do have a novel that I wrote
Okay,
called The
let's
Scions of Michael.
okay,
Scions. So Scions, the children of
okay,
Michael, and it's of the Archangel Michael coming down to Earth to stop an angelic war,
okay,
right? And one of the first beings he meets is a Sasquatch,
okay,
who eventually his family help him and another angel fight this gigantic 60-foot tall minotaur on top of Pikes Peak,
okay,
right? And then the one of the large adult teen male, right, the eldest son, goes with Michael and the people that he's with to on their adventure to Washington State, right?
okay.
Because one of the main humans that are in the story with them is like, listen, Michael, my family are in trouble. I gotta know if they're there and they're safe. But after that, I'll go anywhere you want,
And
because they were protecting a girl.
where can
And huh?
where can people find that
It's
book?
on Amazon.
Okay,
I also have a couple other novels. They're digital, or you can have them. They're print on demand, so you just pay for it, and then
mhm,
it'll, do that. It's also on Barnes and Noble website.
okay,
But yeah, the one part of it is Michael leads an army of Sasquatches
hmm,
dressed in angelic armor and weapons over I-90 bridge into Seattle to wage war against all these demons and monsters, because hell is literally breaking loose and they're all helping him. So
okay.
it's a crazy book, but it's a good book to read.
All right, if you got there you go. Check him out, Gregory Helton. Look him up on Amazon and also Barnes& and Noble website, so
Yeah.
all right, man.
also have a YouTube channel called Goodbye Gluten because I'm a
Goodbye
celiac.
Gluten.
Yeah, so it's the word good dash and then BYE gluten, and we do all sorts of restaurant reviews, a lot of cooking and stuff. So trying to spread the awareness of celiac disease and gluten intolerance and stuff, because a lot of people believe, like even some of my own family, they're like, oh, it's nothing real. It's like, really?
Oh, it is.
I can't. If I wanted to join the military after I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I wouldn't be able to.
No.
Military wouldn't accept it. They're like, nope, you're disabled. It's just like, oh, okay, whatever.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I mean, that was about it for the two things I have going on. Besides, I just formed a new company. So
and what is that company about?
Huh?
What's that company about? Helton Enterprises LLC.
Helton Enterprises is the father company to Goodbye Gluten's Gourmet Caramel Corn.
Oh, okay.
This is their finishing up, but once that's going, I'm going to be selling gourmet caramel corn. I've been donating caramel corn and goodies to the police and fire department for the last 25 years, every Christmas, to say, thank you very much for what they do and for protecting us. Even though some people hate their guts, they're still going to protect them.
Yeah.
So I do that, and I've had people just tell me, hey, you need to start selling this so we don't have to wait a whole year to get our caramel corn.
Well, stay on. I got to ask you a couple questions, and we'll go from there. Okay. All right. Well, thanks a lot, man, for coming on. I'll see you in a minute.
See you guys later.
You guys, I'm telling you right now, what a great guest, and some insane and incredible encounters. Now, you guys, again, these are his stories. This is what he's seen. This is what he's encountered. I love him. So if you guys have had an encounter, you guys like to come on the show or share your encounters, shoot me an email at thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. That's thecryptidpodcast72@gmail.com. And again, you guys, thanks for all the support. I truly appreciate it. I'm not going to get out of here without saying, as my buddy Josh from Mysteries Unknown always says, stay prayed up. And I always like to say, you guys remember, a legend always begins with the sighting. Have a great day, guys, and I'll talk to you later.
And just like that, the night begins to close in. The fire burns a little lower. The woods grow quiet again. But if you've learned anything tonight, it's that silence doesn't mean you're alone. Somewhere out there, beyond the tree line, down that forgotten road, deep in the places maps don't like to go, something is still moving, still watching, still waiting. I want to thank each and every one of you for spending your night with me here on the Cryptid Podcast. Whether you joined us live, shared your thoughts in the chat, or you're catching this later, you're part of this journey now. And remember, these stories don't belong to fear. They belong to the witnesses, to the hunters who stopped hunting, to the hikers who never went back, to the people who looked into the dark and realized the dark looked back. If you've had an encounter with Bigfoot, Dogman, or something you can't explain, your story matters. And one day, it may be told right here on the Cryptid Podcast. Until next time, keep your eyes on the tree line, trust your instincts, and never ignore that feeling that tells you you're not alone. I'm Dano, and this is the Cryptid Podcast. Good night, everyone.